it's still probably the most dramatic kind of moment of my life. I dealt with it really, really badly, and then I was in a sort of 2-year depression. You'd knock on someone's castle door, "Can I have a bed?" And you give them a chicken in exchange for a bed, and that was a giffgaff, a mutual reciprocal gift.
While working at O2, he had an idea for a service that could cut out the faff. And after a tussle over names, he founded mobile network giffgaff.
And only like 4 or 5 minutes in did he go, "Oh, we've got your results back, you've got cancer." And I went, "Oh, good." And he went, "Well, it's not very good, is it?"
All right, sorry.
Here are the keys to the brand. The brand had been valued by Telefonica at $4.5 billion that year.
What are you thinking when you hear that? Are you like, "Oh my gosh," or are you like, "Yeah,
I'm going,
it's absolutely right"?
Get on.
Get exercising, stop numbing the pain,
Yeah.
get help, deal with those negative thoughts, and just get out of that space, whatever you need to do it.
I look back on some of those awful things that happened. I'm not glad, but I'm much better for it. I'm so lucky. We managed to actually have quite a good divorce. Tip for anyone getting divorced: be as nice as you can be. Forgive your partner.
To live life in boldness, you must always sidestep those thoughts of fear. And above all else within your life, always appreciate that it's good to be here.
Got a bit teary there. I love the format. I love you guys. I love your poetry. So bizarrely, Web 2.0 inspired the last one. The new one's pretty wrapped up in Web 3. There is no kind of barrier. There is no customer and us and them. It's just one thing now.
Greetings, I'm Ashley Samuels Mackenzie,
And I'm Charles Parkinson,
and welcome to How I Became.
where we unveil the unscripted journeys of inspirational figures.
Hello, my name is Gav Thompson, and this is how I became the founder of giffgaff, CMO of some consumer brands, and most recently the CEO and founder of a new business called Paraspara. Here we go.
This guest story starts out with travelling and adventure, with mum as a doctor and father as a vet. Who would have guessed advertising would be one of his first ventures? Creating adverts of legend, including surfers, stallions and waves. And moving from advertising to telecoms, what a change of pace. While working at O2, he had an idea for a service that could cut out the faff. And after a tussle over names, he founded mobile network giffgaff.
Nice.
With a career of ups and downs, hopefully we can fit it all into the next few hours. Introducing Gav Thompson, founder and CEO of Paraspara.
Wow, that's a lovely poem, and certainly better than my team have been churning out on ChatGPT recently. It's been coming up thing this week. But yes, that's a lovely poem. Can I get that up on my wall, please?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here, guys. And looking forward to talking about stuff.
Delving into the life and
into
mind
stuff.
of Gav. So your life, I think it fits into a few chapters we
Yep.
have, which we're going to go through just to sort of preview it. We've got the career flying chapter where things are going great into your 20s. Then we have heartbreak, which we'll get to.
Yes.
We have giffgaff, the creation of that. We have almost losing your life, that period, and more heartbreak.
Yep.
And a damage to self-confidence, which you're famed for your confidence.
Yes.
So, and then this latest venture, new startup.
Yep.
So amazing, life story to cover, which we'll delve into. But we're going to take things right back. And just to say, founder of giffgaff, what a revolutionary mobile network that came along and just got everybody to go, finally, don't have to sign up to 24 months of this contract. There's a different way to do things. And that was really cool. I got my grandma on it when it was lockdown and we wanted to have video calls with her. I was like, okay, she needs a phone. She just needs data so that we can video call her. She's in her 90s and it was beautiful. Enabled us to do that.
Happy to be of service.
Thank you very much. So let's go back to where it all began. Your parents lived an interesting life.
They did. Yeah, they really did.
Could you share some of their amazing life experiences?
Yeah, they're kind of, the thing about my parents, particularly my mum, was that they would, and I think I've inherited that, a sort of series of kind of contrasts and quite hard to sort of pigeonhole. So as you said, my mum was a doctor, my dad was a vet, but they both found themselves in the army in the sort of mid-60s, which was quite a big deal for my mum. I think she was one of the very first female army doctors.
That's amazing.
Fully sort of male. And for my dad also was, he had quite a successful sort of private practice in Hampstead, I think, and he just got bored of trimming budgerigars. I was about to say fingers, but claws. And ended up in the army, and then they met in Singapore. And it just sounds sort of very romantic. They met. I think they got engaged on the second night, and they were married 6 weeks later.
Wow.
Which none of their family friends had met, because in those days you weren't traveling around much. So yeah, mid-60s they met and got married, and then they just lived this sort of crazy existence where my dad, although he was a vet, ended up running the British Army veterinary regiment corps, but and whilst doing that, ended up doing kind of work with the SAS. Ended up buying all the cavalry horses for the cavalry. Ended up as finally the Queen's honorary vet for a period of time, which was kind of bizarre. And then sort of pivoted, my words, not his, and then ended up running a horse charity for donkeys and horses in Egypt and Jordan and Pakistan and India. So he was just a really interesting guy, quite a hard man to sort of pin down, but was just very, very different personality-wise to me. Very just solid, good ethics, low self-confidence, well, inner confidence, but just was a very admirable man, and just was although at the time we didn't massively get on because teenagers like me and dads like him, but was just a really interesting guy. And then my mum, who made a decision to sort of stick with him and put her career on hold as a doctor, ended up doing really crazy stuff on the side. So she went from, when we lived in Hong Kong for about 5 or 6 years, and she ended up being a radio DJ in Hong Kong and having her own 2 different radio shows. She did the equivalent of Desert Island Discs in Hong Kong.
How cool.
Which was just really cool and random. It was quite cool for me.
Yeah. What's your mum doing? Well, she's actually a DJ.
Yeah. And then she became a magistrate, and then she ended up as quite a successful artist, painting animals, which again is, you just go doctor, DJ, magistrate, artist. So and that thing of not being able to pigeonhole them and being quite sort of shapeshiftery and being quite just open to adventures and just real carpe diem, both of them. I mean, the number of times that my dad would come home and say, right, we're moving to Germany on next week, we're moving to Ireland, or he went off to the Falklands War, or he disappeared with the SES for 6 months, or went, that was just normal life. There was no that kind of classic sort of just pedestrian, we were, I think we lived in 17 different houses over 20 years or something crazy. And
wow.
So it was fun. And the good thing for me was, or one of the benefits, not a good thing, was in those days, the army paid for you to go to, nice boarding schools, and then would fly you to wherever your parents were. And I definitely had a very kind of privileged upbringing of the years I was in Hong Kong, was predominantly my teenage years. You'd learn how to sail, you'd learn how to scuba dive, you'd learn how to water ski, windsurf. The British Army in those days, threw a lot of money at looking after the kids and the families, and it was great, albeit sort of looking back on it, kind of crazy lifestyle, but a lot of fun.
It sounds like your parents both lived about 4 lives, but between them, they just did so many things.
They kind of did, actually.
Yeah.
If you that sort of pigeonhole thing of, the female doctor, dad as a vet, where you take those pigeonholes would not be my mum as a DJ and as a pretty amazing artist, actually. And then my dad, I still don't quite know the fit between the SAS and being a vet, or I sort of do, but it's just kind of weird, and being in the Falklands War and just crazy stuff, and then sort of jacking it in. He'd just been made the Queen's honorary vet, actually, somewhat bizarrely working for the new Queen's husband, Andrew Parker Bowles, sort of slight aside. And he was just like, this isn't really for me. I'm going to go off and work with a load of homeless donkey owners in Cairo.
As you do.
As you do.
Trade royalty for...
Yeah, so that sort of zigzaggy career and not taking it all too seriously and being quite risk averse and not being they were very, they weren't hippies by any means, but they were just very sort of fluid and just chilled. And that I definitely kind of got that sort of, what's the worst can happen, don't want to be pigeonholed and, quite risk averse, sometimes quite, what's opposite risk averse?
Risk taking.
That's the one. Quite risk taking, and sometimes maybe too much so. But yeah, they set me up well for the career and life I've had.
I think that's it. Knowing that, for people to know that, makes the rest of your life make sense in some ways, and the character you are. And so you go through boarding school. You go, and when people say they managed to blag something, it's often about getting into a club or getting tickets for something or getting a free whatever hairdryer. But you blagged your way into Cambridge.
I did.
How did that happen?
Again, it was sort of bizarre, really. I mean, I was quite clever, and I've been blessed with both my parents, quite smart, and I'd been bumped up here at school basically. So I was having some time to play with, but I was also a bit too young to really make any real life decisions. So. And I think, one of the things, again, I'm blessed with is this, I've got quite a good right brain and left brain. So I'm both relatively creative and also quite sciencey. And so I'd ended up choosing or having chosen for me some sort of ridiculous A-levels, biology, physics, chemistry, maths A-level, which, ouch. And that was more, I think, because they didn't know what to do with me. And they're, well, your dad's about, your mum's a doctor, that you must be doing that. And then fairly early on in that process, I realised that I didn't want to do those A-levels and I was going to fluff them. And I did, quite specially, actually, quite amazingly. But I did a drama AS level as well. And I thought, well, that's much more interesting. And then with the A-level results I had, I think I just had a couple of offers doing random stuff that I didn't really want to do. And it was that kind of, probably the first time I, had to deal with, failure is too strong a word, but the path wasn't going to work out for me, and I really wanted. I was really into drama, and I knew about the Cambridge Footlights. I just sort of got into comedy as a teenager, and was just sort of went, right. I'm gonna become part of that, and found through, again, pre the internet, just a bit of luck. I basically found that there was one course you could do. Which was at a college called Homerton, which used to be the teaching college. It's now a fully fledged member of the university. And at the time, as a male, because there weren't very many male primary school teachers, if you could convince them that you were serious about being a male primary school teacher, you could kind of get in. It wasn't necessarily backdoor, but you could get in. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to try that. So I applied and got rejected, obviously, immediately. And then started a process of sort of letter writing in the days when you wrote letters, going, well, how about if I go off and do a month's, teacher training? Basically, so I sort of blagged one side of the course. The course was a half education, half drama. And so the education guy went, okay, fine, you're serious about being a teacher, you can come, but there's a problem with your A-levels, because A, they're and B, you have to have done an English A-level to get onto this course. And so then it was another thing of getting all my old teachers, English teachers, drama teachers, to write the power of the letter to Cambridge and go, this guy's actually quite talented, and da-da-da-da-da. And again, there's loads of letters. It took about 3 or 4 months finally.
Organising all of this, asking them all, can you write?
Yeah, exactly. Just lots of blag. Yeah. And then finally, the drama tutor said, okay, fine. Okay, goes, you can come. But I've got my eye on you because you're the only student ever to come that hasn't got English A-level, and I'm watching you. And then so I did blag my way in, and then within a week I blagged my way into some Footlights auditions, and then I managed to blag my way into becoming the I think it was the assistant director of the Christmas show, and then amazingly the director got ill, So my whole life is a series of these bizarre things.
You've clearly
She-
got the gift of the gaff.
Gift of the
gaff.
There you go.
Gaff.
Hey.
So she got quite ill, and so halfway through the rehearsals, I ended up as the director of the Christmas show, aged 18, I think, which is just it's a big thing. So yeah, I got lucky and managed to make. We had some very successful people in the. I just surfed on the back of their success, but yeah. So I got into Cambridge, and ended up as the director of Footlights, and did that, and ended up with a reasonably good degree, and that was probably the sort of two or three probably big professional leaps in my life. One was getting into Cambridge, which was amazing because you're in Cambridge with the crappy A-level results, and then the whole Footlights thing does have a, it makes quite a difference. The second thing was getting a graduate training sort of program place at Aberbury Vickers in advertising, which we can talk about in a minute. And then the third was actually getting into making the jump from kind of agency side to client side to join O2 and just joining them at the right time with the right boss. Those are the three moments where I think without those three, life would be very, very different.
So AMV, you mentioned it there, AMV BBDO, massive agency,
Yes.
hugely successful. You get into there, we'll fast track a little bit, and you're making your way through the agency, and it's 1998.
Yeah.
You're an account executive, which is maybe the equivalent in another industry of what, a assistant project manager.
I'm sort of halfway up the ladder of. I mean, I'd got very lucky, perhaps luck. Two bits of luck. Sorry. One was when they were interviewing me for the AMV grad thing, which was they put a lot of energy and effort into that. I think there was like 2,500 applications for like 3 jobs or whatever. The reason I got the job was in the middle of the interview, the guy interviewing me, a chap called Max Burt, they'd won the BT account, which was the biggest account in the UK. Remember that It's Good to Talk stuff.
Yeah.
And in the middle of the interview, his PA walked in and told him, which he'd been the planner on, and he just went nuts. And he never remembered a single word I then said. But people remember feelings and associations.
Yeah.
When he was looking at the thing, he went, "He's the guy."
He's the
just
guy.
because I
Don't know why.
association.
Yeah.
And then when I got there, they divvied up. There's 3 of us, and they sort of divvied up their 3 main accounts: BT, Sainsbury's, and Volvo. And it was literally a lottery. And they gave me Volvo, and I was just really, really into cars, and they didn't know that. And so within a few days, I was just Mr. Car Geek and helping the creators write these ads, and so got again luck. The BT thing was luck, and the Volvo thing was luck. So I was halfway up a ladder, and I worked with some amazing creators on Volvo, and then we got a call one day about for the Guinness pitch.
And you're still in your mid-20s at this point, quite young, and they go in this meeting, who wants to take the Guinness account?
Yeah.
And you have the audacity at this young age to go, I'll do it.
I've got that.
And can you just paint the picture for people of what, that's not the normal thing to do at that stage of your career. And what were you saying you were assigned, how big is this account?
I mean, it was massive, and it was at the time the account in London. Ogilvy, they had it for years. Done some really good ads with Rutger Hauer. They just, it was like the prime account that was both financially very rewarding for the business.
How much were we talking, do you think?
I think in those days, that was just the end of when things would get paid on percentage of media, but it was probably worth about 3.5 million in fees to the agency and probably 20-25 million in media. So it was a big deal.
So what percentage of their revenue would that be?
Oh, AMVs?
Yeah.
I mean, it was the biggest pitch that year probably in the industry, and it was you didn't mess around with it. And I think in those days, and it's really hard because I look back on it and think I must have been an arrogant prick, but I just may have, and I'm sure that people who know me listen to this, no mate, you didn't, but I may have just managed to kind of, it's not sort of cheeky chappy, but I just never took it that seriously, and I had really managed to do well on Volvo, and managed to get some of the creatives, Tom and Walt, who were the creative team at the time, to kind of to know. It's always I do quite put a lot of effort into people and getting on with people and being matey and a little bit of hopefully some charm and a bit of humour and stuff. And I just managed to be quite matey with them. And I think Andrew Robertson had just become managing director. Now Andrew was a much better polished version of me, but he was 30. He was 32, I think, and he'd been made the MD of the biggest agency in Europe at the time. And I think he just quite admired, that sort of chutzpah of someone that's going, well, I'm already, the account director on probably our best account, Volvo, but I remember he just looked at me and went, what are you talking about? You're already account director of Volvo. And I went, yeah, but, and I just said to him, the reason I know good at Volvo is I know about cars. Guess what? I know quite a lot about beer as well. And it was that sort of, it is cocky, and I think in the past it's clearly come across as cocky, but I don't believe it's arrogance. I think it's a sort of, I'll give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? I'm backing myself.
Quiet confidence.
It's a confidence, but it's with a smile and a bit of it's just backing yourself. I think that's definitely one of my themes. And I think he was just like, okay, well, no one else is doing this, and you do have a relationship with the creative team, who were the best in London at the time, and they did all the hard work. I just took some glory off them. There was a very good planner who, Jeremy, who so it was a team effort. But I managed to be the account director that won that pitch. I remember we won it on my birthday, and I remember waking up the next morning. It was on Friday. They'd given us the account, and this is why advertising is both great and weird, because you are sort of lying there. I was 27 or something, going, "Gosh, I'm now Guinness and Volvo probably and you do sort of feel like Mr. Billy Big Bollocks, and actually, but
at the time, as a 27-year-old, you're like, I am smashing it. Life.
Yeah, I did, and I did something quite funny. Just as an aside, so Andrew Robertson had just come from WCRS, who'd had the BMW account, and he was obsessed by BMWs and Ferraris, as was I. And on the Monday, he sort of said, calling up to his office, and went, mate, this is amazing, well done, and how can we say thank you, sort of thing. And again, being sort of cocky, there was on the desk in his office was a books of the BMW M cars, right? That and I hadn't planned this, and he said, how can we thank you? Just pointed at the book and just sort of jokingly went, well, one of those would be nice. And again, no one would have said that. I think at the time our company car was like a Volvo 440.
Oh, not the book, you meant the car.
The car, yeah, the car. And he goes, what do you mean? And I went, like an M3 or something. And he sort of laughed and just sort of went, oh, I'll get back to you. And then about 24 hours later said, okay, the CFO's away that week, which he was. Finance director's away. I've spoken to Terry, who was the guy that used to run the car fleet for us. I've agreed with Terry, if you can get a BMW M3 on the fleet before the finance director comes back, I'll sign it off, kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
Nice. It was amazing. And that was very kind of Andrew Robertson. Yeah, he was very good at that sort of bit of a rule breaker himself, so I then had to find a BMW M3 that was available that week in London to buy. And
so what, you're calling up dealers?
Every freaking BMW dealer, they just come out and they're like, no, good luck, it's a year waiting list. And then I found one at a BMW dealer in Fulham that was a cancelled order, and it was bright purple. It was this metallic purple with white leather interior, and the guy had already pimped it up with this sort of massive exhaust and wheels.
Exactly what you wanted.
Yeah, exactly what I wanted. And it was literally, I said to Andrew, so I've found this one, and he's like, well, better get it, mate. And it was so not the car you'd want, because it would look ridiculous. But it was like, it's either that or you're going to get another Volvo. So it arrived on the Friday, and it was just so embarrassingly but it was still an M3. But my mates, everyone just took the piss. And 3 weeks later, it got nicked. Nicked. And they stripped everything out. They stripped the seats, the engine, everything. They just left the purple bodywork on these bricks in Balham.
You get it for having a purple car, yeah.
Yeah.
With a big exhaust.
Sorry, that's a hell of a tangent.
I love that. You said you put your hand up and thought, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
Well, it went pretty amazingly.
It did, yeah.
Considering,
It did.
we'll play
I'll tell
this.
you what.
We'll play this somewhere on screen now.
Tick followed talk followed tick
The
followed
Guinness
talk
Surfer
followed
Ad.
tick.
Yes.
Is what came out of this pitch, and you were
Yeah.
account exec on this, what is known as one of the
Hey,
most
says I don't
famous.
care who you are. Here's to your
Some say the
dream.
greatest ad of all time. It's right up there in the list of
Bill
best
Taylor's
ads of all
return to
time
the bar.
lists.
Yeah.
Here's
What
to you,
an achievement! How did it happen?
Very small. I mean, I was
with
you
all
know,
his heart.
So the story was the Guinness guys, put the cat out for pitch, and they had a strategic problem, which was the big volume opportunities for drinking Guinness is a Friday night, and they were being outsold by Stella because guys at the bar, busy bar, too long to pour. Yeah, the whole double pour thing. They were just like, I can't be asked for that. I'll get a Stella. And the clever bit, which nothing to do with me, the creative guys, Tom and Walt, were like, well, they didn't drink, either one of them, but they were going, well, how do you turn the negative of waiting into a positive? Because you can't speed it up, but you've got to manage that expectation. And the big idea was, we'll go from sort of being impatient to anticipation. And so we're waiting for this amazing event, and then you get into, well, what are things that people anticipate? And very quickly you come up with a list of them, and things like sex, which clearly you anticipate. You can't talk about that in alcohol advertising. So you end up with quite a small list. And again, the client, I've always believed clients get the advertising they deserve, right? The client was a chap called Addy Fennell, genius client, probably one of my best ever clients. We actually had it as a poster. So the guys had written Good Things Come to Those Who Wait. The original ad, which I had helped quite a lot on, was about how long it took to pour a pint of Guinness, 119 and a half seconds. We sort of made that up. We did make that up. But then we had a poster of just a guy with a surfboard next to him, looking out to sea, shot from behind. Good Things Come to Those Who Wait. And the client went, that's it, because that's the simplest idea of anticipation. Can you turn that into a TV script? Which was a very ballsy move on his part. And so we made the original sort of swimmer ad, which I still think is a lovely piece of film with it's a beautiful, the guy racing the pint, the old man, and his brother races him and he lets him cheat. Shot by Jonathan Glazer, genius. And then the second one was Surfer, and again, it was a team effort. Like the guys really, really, really needed the horses in it. That doubled the production budget. Most people on the team, including the research agency, were going, we'll take the horses out. You don't need the horses. We'll just do it without the horses. And again, fair play to the client. He was like, no, we need the horses. And,
Not be the same.
and Jonathan, combination of Jonathan and the guys and a great client. It just, again, it all kind of came together. And one of the funny things about that was the music, the left field track, which lots of people loved at the time, but that only came in 24 hours before the end of the process. It was going out for St. Patrick's Day, and we had a different track on it. We were really running out of time, and it was like a Sunday evening. It was going on a Monday night for Tuesday morning, St. Patrick's Day. And yeah, just someone happened to walk past who had been working on the new Left Field album. And anyway, it all came together, but yeah, and it was amazing. And it was one of those moments where a few of us, and again, I was a tiny part of that, had just had this belief that this is going to be worth fighting for. Both the horses, the original idea, the music, and against a lot of naysayers, a lot actually. Some of them big parts of the process, and the agency were going famously, literally, like, just take the horses out. And then to get it made, and it was, the research agency didn't want to make it. Miller Brown, who was research said it's to, the media agency didn't want to do it. I remember having a fight with one of the media agency people in the taxi, because he said, because we wanted to launch at 119.5 seconds, they were going, just do it as 30s. So it was, when it finally launched and did amazing things for the brand, did amazing things commercially, and still now gets voted one of the best ads of all time. My little part of that makes me proud, but also the lessons I learned were quite important,
Yeah.
which is you sometimes, you got to fight for things you believe in, and you have to take a stand, and part of the journey is having people disagree with you, and that was a really good lesson to learn, relatively early on in my career, actually.
And that's interesting because that will come up later in the naming of giffgaff.
Of course.
We'll get to that
one. Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was great to hear the kind of back end to that ad, because I remember seeing that as a young person, just being captivated. Just, what is this?
It was one of those. I mean, so used to sound nostalgic about those days. It was one of those ads that when it used to come on in the pub, people would stop talking.
Yeah.
They'd be, and when it was on in the cinema again, people would stop talking, and you'd hear people go, I love this ad, and it didn't really behave like an ad. It's just, it's a really simple idea with some quirkiness around the music and the whole idea of what he's saying. The horses were at the time really cutting edge, CGI, less so now, and it just all kind of worked. And right at the heart of the idea was a consumer truth, which is I don't mind waiting for this because it's worth the wait. So it's one of those few moments where the business problem, we've got to sell more pints on a Friday night, met a customer insight, we have to turn the negative into positive, anticipation, met an amazing sort of creative idea that was sort of brutally, powerfully executed, i.e. long time lengths, lots of media budget, and even now you go, God, if only more people knew that, advertising would still probably be more impactful and more enjoyable and more successful than the crap we have to deal with these days.
So your career's flying at this
Yeah.
point, doing great. The next chapter of your life, you moved to New York,
Yes.
and you're just feeling on top of the world.
Yeah.
You've had a purple BM, it got nicked, but that can't stop you. Cambridge can't stop you. You
No.
still got in,
Yeah.
and you're flying. And
Yeah.
you have a girlfriend at this point.
Yep.
And you think, this is the person I want to be with for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I was about to ask her to marry me.
Walk us through the events of what happened.
I mean, it's a word that I don't think I really know the definition of it. I was talking about someone last night, actually, which is hubris. I think I know what it means, but I don't really. But I think it was this, what I'm about to say. So I was 29. I had this crazy gifted life, right? Amazing childhood, great boarding school in the UK, flying back and forth to Hong Kong for free surfing lessons, blagging away into Cambridge, managed to get into Footlights, working in Footlights, all these, would end up very famous, successful, absolute A-listers, and they were all my mates. I was also, I should have mentioned that the college I went to, the teaching college, was also 95% women, tough gig. Got into MV, which probably was one of the best agencies in town, and then done Volvo and then Guinness, and was just such a Billy Big Bollocks. I was probably a horrendous prick at the time. I'd like to think I wasn't, but people listening to this don't need to write in to confirm that. But AMV were really good at the career progression thing, and they'd said, right, go to New York. BBDO New York was obviously the centre of BBDO, and learn about planning, and then come back in a couple of years, and I think I was back to, anyway, I think I was destined for great things. Both Michael Bork and Andrew Robertson and Scylla were all, I was in a group of people who were part of the future of the agency, I think. And so I went to New York, again, all on the sort of BBDO thing, amazing. The whole thing was amazing, and I was, and it was all pre-planned, so it was go and become one of the planning directors of BBDO New York. I wasn't a planner, but didn't seem to bother anyone. I was just a sort of English guy, and you can milk that stuff a little bit in New York. Certainly you could in those days. So walking around in cricket jumpers, and the old rat may or may not have appeared. Or even the old cricket bat may have done in my arm to the odd meeting. Who knows? No one had smartphones back then. But I was playing up to this thing, and I'd taken my girlfriend with me, English girl who we'd been going out for about a year. It was definitely, at the time, I was like, this is it, love of my life. And I was just, everything was so amazing. I was living in this warehouse apartment in the West Village. I was walking to the office, getting paid a ridiculous amount of money, living with this beautiful girl who I thought I was about to ask her to marry me. And, you know, and life was amazing. I mean, really, like, doesn't get much better than this. And then I found out, you know, by, you know, unfortunately, looking at a laptop she'd left open with an email there, that she was having an affair with somebody else. And
What were your emotions when you saw that email?
man, it's still now, it's funny, it's still probably the most dramatic kind of moment of my life. Just that, just reading it and just going, wow, you know, we were going to Bali in about 3 weeks. We booked the flights, booked everything. My mate was going to come to Bali and I was going to propose to her. And it was amazing. I literally thought my life was perfect. And then when you find out the woman you love is having an affair, it was really crushing, actually. And I dealt with it really, really badly. And that didn't help. I sort of threw her out. I just...
What did you do in that moment? You saw the email.
I just was like, I couldn't believe it. And I kind of, and again, this is hubris, right? I kind of thought she's making a terrible mistake. I mean, this is an insight into my hubris, arrogance, whatever. I just was like, well, has she gone mad?
How could she leave this?
Yeah.
I've got everything.
Yeah, you were flying.
It all.
Yeah.
Literally, with hindsight, it was all this sort of material success, and a lot of it. And yeah, we lived in a freaking unbelievable lifestyle. She wasn't working at the time, and with hindsight, you go, well, that can't be great for. I think she was 25. She doesn't make her feel good about her life, but the arrogance or hubris of me at the time was like, well, you know, she doesn't need to work. She's living the life of luxury, and that was all wrapped up in that sort of. No one wants to be, you know, a kept woman, particularly that age in New York, but yeah, at the time you just go. I was like, well, she must be having some kind of mental episode. Sort of literally threw her out the house and said, "Get." It's so arrogant, you know. Go back to England, sort this business out with this man.
Was she in the house when you saw the email?
No, it was about 5 minutes. I had about 5 minutes to work out a plan.
Yeah,
and it was just shit. And I did sort of throw out a very dramatic. It was all very Shakespearean, East Endian. I mean, it was horrible. It was really lots of drama. I shouldn't be looking at her emails, which didn't help. And it was like, go and sort this out. And then I'll come back and, you know, it's like a Victorian. You know, go off and sort. And I'll be waiting for you. And guess what? She never came back. And hence married the guy and is, you know, with him, and you know, it's got a lovely family and yada yada yada. But that sort of finding out, throwing her out the house, and then realizing that I shouldn't have thrown her out of the house, actually, because that was a mistake. I should have tried to work her through that. I should have reflected that a good part of why she was behaving like she was behaving was because of how I was treating her, and she didn't feel empowered, and she wasn't an equal part. All the things you look back and go, dull. But at the time, and then it was just a horrible journey of just going from what I thought was perfect to what I thought wasn't rock bottom by any means, but it was my little rock bottom of losing the woman I loved, making some bad decisions, and then doubling down on those bad decisions. So having thrown her out of the house and sent her back to London, I then followed her back to London. So jacked in all my job, jacked in the whole BBDO career path thing. Got back to London again, still with this notion that she was gonna, and she never did. And then I was in a sort of 2-year, probably a depression, but didn't realise it. And
what was going on? Why
I would
say that.
Actually, I was. That's probably the point where I am embarrassed about my behaviour. I think up until that point I was charming and, you know, I was decent. I think for those 2 years, I mean, I had a great job. I was managing part of TBWA, you know, and I dyed my hair white. I bought a Porsche convertible, and I just spent. I mean, just just all the cliches. I mean, I was living that cliche of guy who's probably having some kind of breakdown, depression, but isn't going up to it. It was sort of horrible. Actually.
You could go back in time and speak to yourself now. What would you say to yourself?
I'd sort of say don't be I'd say lots of things actually, which is I was just very wrapped up in all this outer-directed crap, all these, you know, the things that I thought were important, which were job, career, money, success, status. I'd got so involved in that sort of hall of mirrors and I was lucky enough to be sharing it with a woman that I love, but hadn't really checked in on her and how she felt and whether she was enjoying it as much as I thought she was, but then even when it sort of then was collapsing, I was still chasing that, and you know, it wasn't terrible. I mean,
did it become an obsession to try and get her back? Was that life became all about that?
Incredibly. No, I knew. Again, it's all very tragic. I remember I came back. My godmother had died. I came back for my godmother's funeral, and it was all just everything felt so Shakespearean and EastEnders. There was lots of tears and gnashing of teeth, but I knew by then I'd ballsed it up, and then it just became a sort of 18 months of self-pity, and it was just horrible. I hated that period.
Did it affect your work as well?
Do you know what? I mean, it sort of did in that I ended up getting fired. So, I mean,
yeah, that's one.
Sorry, that's what you're getting at. You knew that, didn't you? No, I fell out with Trevor Beatty and got fired. So yeah, of course I did. I mean, I was just my mental health was not right, and I hadn't dealt with it, and I hadn't recalibrated. That was it.
Yeah,
I was now still doing the same thing, expecting a different result, and we all know what that defines. And yeah, it was tough.
Have you been able to heal from that experience?
Yeah, it took a while actually. I mean, I went off to Australia, having been fired, and that was that. I had sort of 6 months sort of out of work and just travelled around with a really good friend of mine whose boyfriend had been killed in a car crash, and so we had quite a few months, Lisa and I, to just sort of grieve and recalibrate, and Australia's great for that actually. Just, you know, new fresh weather, and had a job. It was a really, really good lesson, but it took an extremely long time to really learn the lesson. You see what I mean? It's only, you know, another year or two later that I really. So I was into Australia for 2 years. So it's probably about end of 3 or 4 years. I finally worked out what had happened, my accountability for it, my part in the story, and how I should do things differently moving forward.
What would you say to someone who's gone through something similar and may not be identifying those signs in themselves yet?
It's a really good question. Look, I'd say, yeah, it's obvious stuff. I'd say the worst thing you can do in those situations is kind of dive into an unhealthy lifestyle. You know, so I think my advice would be, you know, just try and not use the normal things that most of us use to numb the pain, because that is a fool's errand, and you'll get bitten harder later. And I think the other thing, which is an obvious lesson, is the answer to most of happiness is not the things I thought they were. The answer, the money, the car, the job title, you know, they're great, and they're an important part of people like me's self-worth and feeling validated and successful, but they are by no means the core. And when you get it wrong, which I did, I was obsessed by that and forgot my partner in the middle. You have to sort of learn those lessons, and sometimes, you know, you can't be taught those lessons until you've gone through it, but coming out of it, you've got to go, what just happened? You know, what should I learn from it? What are the teachable moments? And you know, working, yeah, I think advertising is just, it's less so nowadays, but it was quite guilty in those days of allowing lots of people to think that their life was amazing because of all the accoutrements that you got. But But yeah, I mean, it was good. I'm glad, it's like all these things. It's like when I had got cancer. I'm glad I had it. It was time, but I'm a better person for it.
So your time ends in Australia. You're working at a startup, which is like an offshoot of AMV. Is that correct?
No, I was actually the planning director of Publicis Mojo in Australia, which again was a really, really good job. I'd met my future wife in Australia, South African lady Nicole, and actually again probably had the more stable, healthier version of the life I've been living in New York, right? So life in New York was the crazy and was truncated or stopped by my girlfriend finding out she's unfaithful. And then in Australia, similar but very different, amazing, the thing in Australia, they used to do this thing, they don't do it anymore. It's such a shame. The government used to encourage POMs to come to Australia, and you could claim your rent out of your gross salary. So basically tax-free rental. So everyone who works outside lived in this freaking ridiculous places. So I lived in a place called Woolloomooloo Wharf. My next door neighbour was Russell Crowe. It was obscene, but because you were living somewhere you'd never be able to afford. And what that meant, apart from knocking around the Russell, never did that actually, but you just bump into him in the car park. But you'd walk to work, and if those of you know Sydney, you walk through the Botanical Gardens, past the Rock House to the rocks where Mojo's and I just met and got engaged to this fantastic woman, and life was amazing. Sydney's amazing. And then that was interrupted by a call from some ex-colleagues from AMV and a few of my other mates going, we've just set up an agency. We're looking for one more partner called Campbell Doyle Dye, CDD. Would you consider coming back to London and being a co-owner, partner in this business? And I said, yeah. And again, that was, it wasn't a mistake by any means, but it certainly didn't end the way I was thinking it was going to end. Because, when you're in advertising in those days, the peak of the pyramid was having either your name above the door, CHI had just launched, BCCP had just launched. We were the third that launched of those three, and the only one that no one's ever heard of since. And although my name was not above the door, I was in about a year later rather than being at the founding stage. You go, well, this is it, right? This is what we've worked for, guys. And again, it wasn't quite what I thought it was going to be, and that was because I hadn't really done my homework. And that's one of the themes of my personality is, I'm very impatient, and which can be really good and can be really bad, and it can be great, means I can get done, and I'm very good at making things happen quickly. In this instance, it probably meant I liked the idea of being a partner in an agency. I hadn't really gone through it properly, and maybe if I had, might have made a different decision. But yeah, I left Sydney to go back to London to work with 4 of my ex-colleagues.
So you have this 3 years,
Yep.
Being, an owner of a company.
Yep.
But you end up at O2. How did that happen? And we're getting on to the origin story of...
Yeah, the origin of giffgaff. As I sort of said earlier, I hadn't really, and this is a theme of my life, right? And again, both good and bad. I hadn't really thought it through. This is my life. And I hadn't really thought through what it meant to be a partner of an agency. I hadn't really done proper exploration on the equity structure of the business. We'd already been, Omnicom had already taken a 51% stake in the business, which, if you think about it now,
it's a big chunk.
Big chunk, and it gives them all the rights of exit, and they just take the exit price and yada, yada, yada. So, and at various stages on that journey, we'd started off with 5 partners, which I was one, and it was kind of interesting. One by one of the partners would get culled, and I think I was the third to get culled in year 3, and you could just tell it was we had 3 creative partners who were all incredibly talented, and in any other world would have been their own creative directors, but we had 3 of them, and anyway, it was just watching a slow motion kind of just sort of your dreams of it was very slow motion. But anyway, I knew it wasn't going to work out, and
you sort of dreamed that all you and your mates were all going to build this great company together and you'd be successful, and it sort of wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, I thought. So look, you. I was looking at CHI. I knew Johnny Hornby. He'd been my boss at TWA. I knew those guys. I knew Goldie well from university. I was looking at BCP because I'd known the WSS guys quite well. And you just so when it wasn't panning out, you just got to make a call. And at the time, I knew that I was the third guy going to get cold, and it was sort of fine. So and then I got a call one day from a headhunter about O2, and it was weird. I was very close to getting a job in the music industry. Actually, I was very close to getting a job at Sony BMG, doing their brand partnerships, and I thought that was amazing. I mean, literally, it was like kind of my dream job. And the day they would sign the contract, the CEO got fired sometime in the summer of 2008. And again, it was kind of that felt really right on my street. It was kind of music, which is probably my real passion, and quite a lot of glitz, which I still quite liked. Anyway, and then I got the sort of call the week later from a headhunter about O2, and I remember just going, she said, "Oh, it's in Slough." And I was just like, the office had just, I'd just been out. The office, I knew the office quite well, so you're kind of going, Wernham Hog, and it actually is on the same place.
Not quite Sydney.
It's not Sydney. And anyway, it was one of those, and then I met Kath Kears, who was the ex-CMO, who probably the only person that they could claim to be the founder of O2. I mean, it wasn't like that, but she's certainly, the DNA of O2 is all about Kath. And she one of those amazing moments. I met her for a first interview and just totally kind of fell in love with her, and we had one of those unbelievable moments where in the first interview, we managed to craft the brand strategy for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years of O2 in that first interview, which was all about communities and being better connected. And it was, I kind of knew in the first interview, because I was scribbling away and what about this? I kind of knew that we were probably going to work together. And then so she hired me, and we were worked together for a long time, actually. So yeah, no, she was amazing. So I joined O2 because of Kath, and O2 was, was one of those special companies that if, as your first client job was unbelievable, because it knew the power of its brand more than virtually any other company I've ever worked for, because it had been BT Solnet, terrible brand, and they'd been number 4 on the market, and they'd done a sort of management leverage buyout and bought it for £1, I think. And at the time, all the papers had said, massive waste of money, even at £1 or whatever it was. And the team, of which Kath was one of them, went, no, we're going to rebrand as O2, but it's nothing to do with the O2 and the bubbles. It's all about the values, the people, our view of customers. And so when I got there, sort of 3 years in, they'd already number 1, and my job was to kind of go, right, take us to the next level. But because I was the brand guy, I was the head of brand strategy, everywhere you went, you were kind of like, brand guys coming. And you were every single meeting. The CEO, Matthew Key at the time, gave me the sort of metaphorical when I joined. First, he said, here are the keys to the brand. The brand had been valued by Telefonica at $4.5 billion that year, which again was one of the first times that a brand had been valued on the balance sheet. And he's like, here are the keys to this £4.5 billion asset. Your job is to grow it. And so it was just a very different way of looking at brand. And it wasn't.
What are you thinking when you hear that? Are you like, oh my gosh? Or are you like, yeah,
freedom?
Yeah, I've stuck my hand up at 27 to get it.
No, this is me. I'm going,
It's absolutely right. I am the man for that.
No, and
let's make it 10.
That's part of my thing, which is both my strengths and weaknesses. I'll give most things a go. I very rarely say no. I will back myself, but I also don't take it too seriously. And that combination, somewhere when it works in Guinness, or I think in the case of O2, you're like, yeah, I've got that. And so, yeah, I joined and had a really good run, worked with some amazing people. VCP were a great agency, Charles Valance, legend, still is. And again, with the great boss and the great environment, managed to help them on their journey with a new brand strategy and a whole new brand campaign. And then had this idea for this thing that became giffgaff.
So while you're time at O2,
Yes.
you know, you created things such as a very famous line in O2 marketing. Hit it, Ash.
We're better connected.
That is exactly how to say it. The comma was always really important because a lot of people never saw the comma. Like, we're better connected. And it's the comma, guys. And I thought this was a work of genius. And I was very excited when they came back to it recently because they dropped it for about 6-7 years and like, fools. But yeah, no, again, teamwork, VCP, great. Charles, great.
And this is also where you met Dougie, Julian
I
Douglas,
met Dougie, yes,
who
your previous guest.
was on the show and introduced us. And,
Did you? Yeah, the Dougie story. So just again, a little aside. So I joined O2 primarily as the client, actually, but Susie, who was the client, she was kind of complicated. She went off and did something else, and they brought in Shardy Halliwell, who, and anyway, for a period of time, for about 4 months, I was the kind of main client for O2 with VCP. And poor things for them. I was my first ever client job. Still thought I knew a thing or two about ad agencies and being an account man or planner. I'd been in both a suit and a planner. So when I joined, and I think, to be fair to me, VCP had every agency goes in cycles, and I think Susie had been their client for years. I think they probably weren't on their A game. And I joined, and Kath and I had this kind of boss romancy thing. I don't know what you call that, but anyway, not in a weird way. And she was going to, like, Gav, you know, you've got to get out there and you've got to, this whole being better connected. So I was a bit of an arse, to be honest. And I probably, again, overplayed my hand with VCP. And long and the short of it was I sort of put it up pitch, the account. Yeah, again, I'm not really proud of it, but I basically said, look, come on, guys, either crack it or we'll have a pitch, and that, you know, and so they had to work through Christmas. Again, not proud of this, and they did crack it actually, and that's when we came up with We're Better Connected, but for that 3 or 4 month period when I joined, which is like September through to January when I pitched, they were like, this guy's a nightmare.
They must have not liked you. You were not popular at that time.
No, I was not popular at all, mate. And I remember sort of having all of them, VCC and P, trying to kind of mark me off. I remember they took me to lunch at the Ivy, all 3 of them. And with hindsight, anyway, it doesn't really matter. But they basically said, he's a nightmare, we need to fix him. And they did some work, research, and they found that I was mates with Dougie. Who we all know, Doug. He's ex-guest of yours, but he'd done very well in advertising, and so when they were looking for someone to man mark me, they found Dougie, and so yeah, he joined, and I was his client for 7 years, and we had a really, really good time. He was great. I think I was a fairly demanding client, but I also, you know, I think we had a good time, and I think we got on well.
Let's get to giffgaff.
Yeah, and then one day. So I'm there in Slough, done the new campaign, slightly missing the days of going on shoots to Hawaii or South Africa or whatever, and said to my boss, Tim, can I go to this conference in San Francisco? He was lovely, went, yes. I went there. It was a Web 2.0 conference. It wasn't very good. And I was sort of sitting there and it was just boring. And I had one of these books and I was noodling in the back, and it was about Web 2.0, which was all about micro communities being enabled by the web. And I guess the lesson, if there is one in this story, is it's actually quite good to just keep your ear to the ground. And it was a big thing at the time. Summer 2008, it was the Obama campaign. TripAdvisor had just been launched. Wikipedia had just been launched. Twitter had just gone into the mainstream. And those 3-4 things are all powered by web communities. And I was just sitting there and noodling in the back of the book, and I wrote a few things, but I wrote this word mutuality. I thought that was a good word for how you'd run a business. And I wrote I put Web 2.0, and then across the 2.0 out, and I put O2, and I put basically 2.0. So I took O2 and reflected it as 2.0. Genius. And then wrote the brand strategy, which is all about mutuality, about customers doing the marketing, customers doing the customer service, customers having 20% of the profits, customers owning, and wrote it, and then So I went back to London and they said, how's the conference go? It was shit, but I've got this. And again, a lot of bosses would have gone, yeah, what is that? But Tim Sefton, my boss, and then Ronan, the CEO, kind of just got it. And were like, that's really interesting. And this idea that you were going to basically talk to this sector of the customer base who didn't love any of the brands. There's about 11%. They were kind of, we call them digital nomads, I think. And they were very digital enabled, but they didn't like the big brands because they felt they were a bit ahead of them, and they didn't really like this sort of slightly patronizing deal that was going on those days where you'd get all these offers, and in their mind there was just the red one, the orange one, the pink one, blue one, and we don't really care, but just give us one of them, and we kind of resent for all this free pizzas, 2-for-1 tickets, the O2, we don't give a about that. So with that in mind, you kind of go, well, that's 11% of the base, that's a chunk who are brand disloyal. There's a thing called Web 2.0, which is all about enabling communities through the web. You kind of go, interesting. And then the third bit of it was, I was having one of my many midlife crises at the time. This was the motorbike one, where I'd decided to get into biking. I bought a bike, managed to pass my test.
What bike did you buy?
I originally bought a KTM Super Duke 990, but I was way too fat for that. And then the second bike I bought was a BMW 1200 GS. Way too fat for that, not that, but too fat basically. And I couldn't get the suspension settings right because of my fatness. And I was a bit embarrassed to keep going to the BMW dealer and go, and they're literally going, bring out the bits. Like three of this massive wrench. We've never done one like this before. And I was just embarrassed. And what I've learned was this thing called web forums, and so I was on these BMW bike web forums going, I'm a BBG, big bone gentleman, whatever the expression is,
right,
i.e. really fat. Can you help me? And I got all these really good videos back and feedback back, and yeah, do this, do this, do this. And actually, that was the real insight of giffgaff, realizing as the web, there's all these kind of geeky communities out there who will help you without any money changing hands. They were better responses than I was getting from BMW dealership. I was getting them within 5 minutes, and the effort and energy they were putting into it, that was the light bulb moment. Going, okay, if we're talking to these guys who were quite geeky anyway, let's find the uber geeks in this group who know more about phones than we probably do. I knew that most customer service queries were about how do you get your music from an iPhone to an Android, or I knew they were quite functional, and these guys were probably know more. I knew that through web marketing, there was a community-based thing. I kind of knew that was a lot of cost in it, and it was just a sort of, let's take the insight from being a fat biker. Let's take some of the learnings from Web 2.0. Let's take some of the cost out, and let's talk to these guys like they're peers, not we're paternal. And let's get effectively all the marketing done by members and the customer service done by members, and let's make it really cheap and really simple. And let's do it, and let's call it 2.0 because that's O2 but flipped. And let's look at the numbers, and they're really positive because you've taken the cost out. The cost being, the handsets, the marketing, the call centers, the shops, the contract subsidies. Take all that out, you're left with a very cheap model. Everyone was really happy. I then found out I had cancer, tongue cancer, in the middle of all this. And again, back to the guy who gave me the job at AMV because of he got the BT. I went to do the final pitch for giffgaff on my way to the cancer hospital to have my tongue removed, or half my tongue cut out. And all the board knew that I was going, the O2 board knew. Again, can't plan this.
No.
But so it was literally like, it was like a sort of funeral procession. I walked in and everyone knew that I was going to go and have my tongue cut out. And no one was in tears, but in my head, they were in tears. And I did this pitch and they're like, yeah, okay, yeah, we'll do it. Good luck with your tongue. And then I f***ed off for like 3 months. And by the time...
So you're pitching to O2
I pitched to the board of O2, yeah.
to say, can we launch
quid's investment to build this thing.
Wow.
On the way to go to have my tongue removed.
This is your final word.
Yeah, your final word.
Yeah, it was literally, and I genuinely believe had that, I don't, who knows, but I think that helped.
Wow.
Cause.
Wow.
So yeah, they approved it, everything apart from the name.
So just backtrack a little bit. What was the moment you found out you had tongue cancer?
I had moved house. I had private dental care, which, through work. And in those days, you had to, when you left from dentist A to dentist B, dentist A would give you like a MOT of your mouth. So you walk, and when you take that piece of paper, go to see dentist B, and they go, yeah, I'll take you one. And dentist A gave him this clean bill of health. Went to dentist B a week later, and he went, something under your tongue, bit weird, we'll get it checked out. I was like, whatever. Forgot all about it. And then about 8 weeks later, been on holiday for a few weeks in Spain, came back on a Sunday. There was a letter that was probably 2 weeks old saying you've got to go to this appointment on a Tuesday to see a tongue specialist. Completely ignored it.
You ignored it? You
just didn't go. Yeah, didn't go. And then the dentist, who obviously knew exactly what it was, had called the tongue guy just after my appointment on the Tuesday, said, what happened with Mr. Thompson? I'm a bit worried about that. He goes, well, he didn't turn up. He then calls me that night, the dentist, going, dude, you should have gone to that appointment. And I was like, well, I've just come out for holiday, I couldn't make it. He goes, I'm going to get you an emergency appointment tomorrow. You got to go.
At this point, you're thinking, oh.
This point I'm going, yeah, this is a bit tricky. But my mum was a doctor, as we know, and, we just think smoking, I never smoked. One of the few vices I'd never, and so you kind of ignore it. And I was just still in this kind of, world of just rushing around and feeling slightly kind of, immortal or whatever. Went to the guy, he did a biopsy and said, oh, we'll it'll be 2 weeks. I remember driving away, this is a bit gross actually, but I was driving away from the thing and a piece of my tongue fell out of my mouth.
Oh.
That had, from the biopsy. And I remember like winding down the window, sort of flicking it out the window. Just little did I know that what was about to come, this would have been a minor problem. Well, I remember like, oh my God, my tongue's was. And anyway, and then about a week after that, I was in a meeting, funny enough, a giffgaff meeting, got a call and unknown number, not unknown number, just press, and third time the call, and it was the doctor saying, I've had your results back from your biopsy, can you come and see me? And I was kind of, yeah, I'm free next week. And he was, can you come now? And it was in Oxford and I was in London, and I was like, what, like now? And he goes, yeah, just can you kind of come now? So I drove up and I got there quite late, and it was like 6:30, 7 p.m. and the guys were polishing the floor. It was all very kind of, I remember it being quite cinematic. There was no one near the hospital. And then he came in specially, and he remember him sort of putting the lights on and went into his room, and he wasn't the cancer guy. So because I'd ended up having to do this emergency thing, he wasn't the guy that normally tells people you got cancer, right? Someone else. He was the sort of fill-in guy. And I felt really sorry for him afterwards, because he clearly this wasn't his thing. So he started messing around on my mouth again, checking it, and and only like 4 or 5 minutes in did he go, oh, we've got your results back, you've got cancer. And I went, oh, good. And he went, well, it's not very good, is it?
All right, sorry.
And then I asked him his questions. He didn't know the answer because he wasn't the cancer guy. And then I had to, and then it was horrible. I had to call my wife and say I've got cancer and my parents. And it was really horrible. It was nasty, and it's a nasty operation. I had stage 2, which is good, but they had to cut a third of my tongue out, rebuild it out of my arm, which is it's just a horrible operation. They have to open your whole face up, cut down here, sort of plumb your nerves and everything in here. It takes about 11 hours, 12 hours.
Goodness.
My lungs collapsed. I nearly died. It was horrible, actually.
So your lungs collapsed during the operation?
Yeah, it was horrible.
And they told you after we almost lost you?
Yeah, they did, yeah. It was quite touch and go, actually.
What did you feel when you heard that?
The whole thing was just really weird. It was horrible. And I couldn't speak for 3 months, which, as you could now tell, I quite like talking. So that was odd. And there was
that like?
It was frustrating, actually. I had a sort of whiteboard around my neck, sort of Forrest Gumpy kind of, and I got really shit handwriting, so I'd try and write things to either my wife or mates, and they couldn't read it, and I get really frustrated. And
is that really sad? Not really.
The whole thing was just really horrible. It was. I had to have speech therapy every week, and it was literally because when I was at Cambridge, I did qualify as a primary school teacher as an aside. And so I'd done quite a lot of teaching kids to read. And this woman was coming in with this, literally like Janet and John. It was book 1A. The cat sat on the mat, and you'd go, and she'd go, and then she'd record it, and then she'd come back the next week and she'd go, read this, and there was like a tiny bit, but she'd go, that's amazing. Listen to this, and you're going, that's like, I can't live my life.
Oh, are you feeling like very? Is it patronising? Like, oh my gosh, she's applauding me for.
I just found the whole thing. I mean, she was doing her job, but I'm like, I can't. That's not A. That there's no discernible difference between last week and this week, and B. This is not good.
Do you know at this point whether you'll be able to speak properly or at all, or what do you know?
I mean, it's a funny thing, cancer, because it's a numbers game, right? And this is a good lesson for, sadly, anyone that gets diagnosed with cancer. What you'll get is just some stats. You've got to very quickly become quite good at the stats. And what they'll say to you is 100 people or 1,000 people that have something similar to you, this is what happened to that cohort. So they'll say 1,000 people that had this, 100 never speak again. 100. One of the things with it, you lose your saliva glands, you lose all your taste buds. So you have to have like cans of aerosol saliva, which you have to spray in about every minute. And then your teeth, I mean, it's a nasty cancer. Your teeth fall out. They sometimes have to sort of break your whole face open. And it's horrible because your tongue, when you think about it, is very important for talking, very important for swallowing, very important for tasting, very important for kissing. It's quite an important thing that we all take for granted. And so you've got all these stats which aren't, they're not good, the stats. My surgeon, who was good, sort of said, give me 3 months, we'll be all right. But it was still horrible. Everything was fed, you get fed through a tube in your stomach. It was one conversation when I lost a shitload of weight. But even that was weird because they give, the food goes into your stomach and you have different flavours, different menus. And you'd be going, oh, shall I have chicken or... And it goes straight into your stomach.
You don't taste it.
So you can't taste it, but you can smell it. And again, it was just all weird.
Bizarre.
Eventually, it was fine, and my doctor was great. And I think I had 4 operations, and by the end of it, I could speak, and it was fine. And I was much skinnier, but it took a toll on my marriage. And it was just And then anyway, so it was horrible, but a good lesson. And I'm probably better for having gone through that lesson.
What would you share advice-wise to anybody going through something similar?
There's one really hard piece of advice, which, again, another of my podcasts.
Go for it. Plug away.
With Helen Calcraft, the Do Lectures podcast with Gav Thompson. So Helen Calcraft, as some of you may know, the founder of Lucky Journals, has had a terrible cancer journey, way worse than mine. And we talk about it a lot on the podcast, and I think you should listen to it because she sums it up really well. There's a few things. You end up having to sort of challenge your doctors a bit, because one of the things you learn is there's quite often different views about how you treat various cancers, and some cancers are overdiagnosed and overtreated, and some very chemo heavy. My guy was all about the surgery, and I ended up not having to have chemo or radio, which was amazing. And so but it teaches you something that you're not taught before, which is to maybe challenge what the doctor's telling you, because each doctor will have their own version of what they're good at or they believe in, and you've got to match what's right for you and what they believe. And that sometimes means you'd have to disagree with the doctor or go, I'm going to get a second opinion. And we're not trained like that, certainly in the UK with the NHS. I think the Americans are much better at that. So there's a bit of, challenge maybe, or find a doctor you trust or who sees it your way. There's definitely a bit on the stats, which is their only stats, because you can get some really shit stats and you can lose it. The biggest stat that they will tell you, or you can find out, is the single biggest variable to cancer is actually what they call a PMA, positive mental attitude, which isn't in the stats. So you kind of go, if you look at the stats and go, right, I'm going to die, I'm dead, I'm out, that notion will push you into the wrong side of the stats table. If you look at it and go, well, I'm going to be the 10%, 20%, 30%, that notion will probably mean you will be. So there's but it is horrible, but yeah, it gives you, back to the original story about New York and stuff, it makes things like that, it does give you a perspective that I now do have, and I've learned that lesson now, and I think I'm a better person for it. I have a much better view of perspective in life. And every time you meet, when you've survived cancer, you meet lots of other cancer survivors, and then when you meet people sort of in your life and you find out they're cancer, you very quickly go into, what was yours? And I met just someone last week, it's a mum at my daughter's nursery, and the thing you hear from everybody is that you get a sense of perspective coming out of something like that, and that's a good thing, because we all get very bogged down in the minutiae of the day-to-day, the fact I had a BMW M3 or not, all that crap, which we spend a lot of time on, all of us, and some more than others. Once you've had a life-threatening illness and being given another crack at it, you don't get bogged down in that stuff. Now, that can make you quite an annoying person to live with, as my wife knows now, because you can end up going, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Now, that's my view, because I'm kind of rebelling up against, is it life or death? But it does give you a much better view of how you want to spend your time. Do you want to spend time in the office? Do you want to spend your time with your family? How forgiving you are. I'm a much more forgiving person now, both of myself and of friends and colleagues. I mean, Helen and I both say the same thing. We're better for it. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but it does give you a good view of life, and you take it less for granted. There's a weird duality with it, which is weird. You both take it less for granted, but you care more, if that makes sense. So some people say to me, well, how come you're still a fat bastard if you've had cancer? We go, well, because actually you kind of want to live each life day to the full, and you want to enjoy yourself, and actually, you got to get the balance right of kind of carpe diem versus wrap yourself up in cotton wool, and it's an interesting dichotomy that some people go crazy, right? We know those stories of people that become hedonists, and we know some people that become absolutely, I mean, I say cleanliness, that's not a word, but you know what I mean, like just vegan, veggie, just super healthy, and I sort of alternate a bit, but it's a good lesson, but it's a horrible journey.
Well, glad you got through it.
Yeah, you're here.
Glad you're here now, talking to us now
Very much.
so brilliantly on the podcast. Back to the story. It's in parallel to this story. Giffgaff.
Yeah, the name.
So you talked about challenging the doctors about what they were saying.
Yeah.
You were in the middle of challenging O2 about the name.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So it's a funny thing, and again, hindsight. The idea was pretty solid, and again, just lucky, really. My advice to anyone trying to do anything like this is, try and solve a problem in sort of life or the business with a customer in sight. If you're kind of going, what's good innovation? That's what it is, in my opinion. It's either start with the customer going, how do we fix something for the customer, or start with a business problem. In this case, actually, it was quite a neat one of both, where you've got customers going, I just want it to work. I don't want all this extra stuff. In fact, I find it quite a tiny bit resentful because it's complex and I don't need it. And similarly for the business, all this stuff's where the money is, right? It's constant kind of arms race with the big brands, right? Is it 2-for-1 tickets? Is it O2 tickets? Is it tickets to a festival? So if you can take all that cost out and you've got something that the customers prefer, and then the really neat thing was that the device is all about community and helping each other, and the mobile network for people that hate mobile networks. You end up with something that is quite, it should be successful, right? Because customer insight, business problem, and some sort of the flywheel that's going to make it go. And it researched very well, and because we were O2, we could get the one that the most people can't get, which is really cheap airtime. It was all good, and it really was all good. And a lot of it happened when I was in hospital, but the name was a problem for everybody, right? Because I wasn't there, all I was doing was like sending text messages to people going, "It's 2-0 or we're not doing it," kind of thing. Because I thought, and this is why I love being wrong, right? it's great to be wrong. I'd be so completely wrong. I just thought O2 was it. I thought Web 2.0 was cool, and calling it 2.0, and I even did this little animation of O2 animate stand. So this is I don't know what we call it, just massive sort of sense of self-belief and which I'll still have, but I also might be wrong, right? I'm no less of self-believing, but I'm also no less ability to say I'm wrong, right?
And I think that's great, because without that level of self-belief and passion, would you have come up with that idea at the conference and gone back to O2 and gone, I've got this genius idea?
4.5 million, please.
It's the
No,
same thing.
not at all. And I've just literally gone through that all in the last few months.
Yeah.
Sadly, I can't really talk too much about it, but I'm doing it all over again 15 years later with all that knowledge. And it's funny, I've just got the funding yesterday, actually.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And my sort of team, often on this journey, have gone, come on, Gav, just give in to that. Just let that go. You go, no, I'm not letting that. That's important. And so you hammer it, and then eventually you get it in most parts. And the name thing was interesting because Sally Cowdery, CMO, it was never going to be called to her, right? On her watch, right? And I was kind of going, well, it's never going to be called anything but. And what was quite useful, interesting, was it became the argument. So every meeting we had, you'd have the agenda, and it'd be like, business case, target audience, product market fit, tick, 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 tick. And then the name. So every meeting we'd argue about the name for 25 minutes, and all the other just got waved it through. And I started to realise it was never going to be called 2.0, and I started to agree that it was a name. But I realised that let's keep it. It's a good argument to be having.
Well, because you can just get other things.
And it also gave me time to find a better name, which was giffgaff, which I liked because it sounded a bit like Gav, which was genius. And it actually, giffgaff is a Scottish word that means a mutual gift. In the old days, if you were riding across the moors on your horse and you wanted a bed for the night, you'd knock on someone's castle door, they'd open the door, you'd go, can I have a bed? And you'd give them a chicken in exchange for a bed, and that was a giffgaff, a mutual reciprocal gift. Who knew?
Cool.
So it became a sort of a bit of a joke. And then the final nail in the coffin was Telefonica obviously owned O2. And for any Spanish speakers listening, and I never get this right because it sounds like sound like Manuel from 40 Hours, but there is no double F sound in Spanish. And G's in Spanish sounds like H's. So giffgaff to a pure Spanish speaker is a bit like, sorry, apologies for the Manuel impression. It's like, he-ha? Because there's so you're going, it's called giffgaff, and they're going, he-ha? And so anyway, it sort of became, that became the different argument with the Spanish now.
Right.
But because it wasn't 2.0, Sally and everyone was behind it. So
like, finally, he's proved
parcel of
a name.
Yeah, he's got a name, but it doesn't work in Spanish. It's not 2.0. So that was, and look, I was lucky that at the time the business could afford to take the risk it took. They had some money to invest in it. Telefonica were very supportive. Ronan Dunn, who was the CEO, was very supportive. And again, an amazing team who made it happen. And it's been very successful. And no credit to me, all credit to the team that built it and ran it. But yeah, it was a great journey. The funny thing now, doing it again, is on the points of the journey that you're on the first time you do it, you don't realise either how important they are or not important, and also you don't. Yeah, it's to do it for the second time now is really interesting because I now know the really important points to the customers, the really important points to launch it, which at the time you don't know, and you sometimes get those things wrong.
Yeah, I was gonna ask what are like the differences, because obviously giffgaff was launched 15 years ago. What are the differences to what you have to look out now compared to what you had to look at then?
So I can't say too much because obviously I just got the funding approved yesterday. We're pre-launch. It's an idea that, as I sort of said, it comes from both working in telco for 7 years with O2 and Telefonica, spending a year working for TalkTalk last year, doing some stuff with them. And it's a similar, it's how I look at things, which is I like to be the outsider. When I joined O2, I hadn't worked. O2 was full of the industry's full of telco lifers. Lots of people go from brand to brand, and I was the new boy asking those questions, which is always good in any new job or new industry. It's like, why do we do that? Why do we do that? What are the stupid rules? And what are the rules that we impose on customers that they don't really like? And so that's how I got to the giffgaff thing. And the new one is a similar process, really, of going, if you look at the industry now through the eyes of a bunch of people, there are some stuff that doesn't make sense because a lot of it's sort of historical legacy. And there's some stuff that, the question I love to ask people in sort of research groups is, if you had a magic wand, what would it look like? And they'll tell you something quite fantastical, like it should be free, or but you can sort of work with that. And so the new thing is a very similar model to giffgaff, of looking at the market, looking at a bunch of customers, going, if we could do that differently, it would be better for both us as a business or the brand, and also for the customer. And it's that thing where it gets exciting. So with giffgaff, taking all the stuff out meant much cheaper cost to the customer and the business, but weirdly, and then giving it to the community meant much more loyalty and advocacy. And the new thing is that, but in 2023, with there's a bit more technology now that we can do some kind of cooler stuff. And so that's kind of the area it's in, and I can't really say much more than that, but it is very exciting and has some amazing sort of customer research, and unbelievable actually. And what's different now, I get they're all these sort of marketing cliches, but they're kind of true. So we're now in Web3 world. So bizarrely, Web 2.0 inspired the last one. The new one's pretty wrapped up in Web3. And it's just, there is no kind of barrier. There is no customer and us and them. It's just one thing now. And that's probably the difference, is even when we were doing giffgaff, and a lot of the marketing was done by the customers and was user generated, but it was still sort of us to them. And I think in the new world, it's just one big community, and everything's got to work for everyone, really. So it's exciting, but it's the thing that obviously is on your mind is if you mess it up, the kind of the ability to be cancelled as a brand, as a new brand. If you get it wrong and you're inauthentic and you put I was reading about Bud Light this morning. We're sucking down that rabbit hole, but they've lost 25% of their market share in a month because of ouch. And I don't really want to comment on that, but apart from wow.
What we didn't cover was why you left giffgaff. This is a company that is your original idea.
Really good question, and it's a similar answer to why I left the agency Camel Doll Die, which is I was on one level I was the founder of a very successful telco brand. I think the year we launched it won Best New Brand of the Year from the Marketing Society. It was up in the first year we launched as Brand of the Year against Nike and Adidas. You go, amazing, lots of plaudits. What I hadn't done, because there wasn't an option, was negotiate myself into the kind of equity deal, because it was, contractually it was an idea I had on whilst being an employee of O2. It was always their idea. And, there's a point in those processes where you kind of go, look, this is amazing. I've done a really good, interesting thing. I've learned a lot. It's done my career no end of good. But to be blunt, I'm not retiring on the beach. It's, you kind of go, I've got to sort of take that and now do something with it, because I've learned a lot. I've got some experience that not many people have, but I don't want to be the guy just sitting at giffgaff and, waiting my years out. It was kind of like, take this and take the learning and go again. And, Telefonica had gone from being this ex-BT Cellnet group of people who were all entrepreneurs like Kath and Matthew, and they'd all done earn-outs for Telefonica, and you could just, sadly, it happens all the time. The companies get bought because of the team and the entrepreneurial spirit of the team. Team do their 3 or 4 year earn-outs, the team then leave, and the owning company try and turn that company into their company, right? It happens the world over. And I just was in the middle of that. And I just remember thinking I couldn't have got giffgaff done now. And I've learnt what I need to learn, and I want to go and put that learning elsewhere. And then I got a call to be the CEO of Paddy Power, which seemed like a great job. And so I was CMO for 3 or 4 brands. I made some bad decisions, or had some bad luck that meant some of those jobs didn't pan out. And then lockdown happened, and then with some, lockdown wasn't. I didn't have a good lockdown. He did, but I mean, I got back into that kind of slightly depressive time I'd been at 20 years earlier.
What was going on?
It was a much less dramatic version of the same thing of sort of bubble bursting, where, the New York thing, big bubble burst drama, and with lockdown, small bubble burst, which was, career had gone really, really well to the second iteration of the career, founder of giffgaff, CMO of Paddy Power, CMO of Yopa.
Did you think at this point, finally, I've got my career back to that?
I did, actually.
Level
I really did.
great.
I really did. It was funny. There's a circularity in all these things. And then lockdown sort of happened, and I just mistimed some things. And the short answer is I couldn't get the jobs I wanted. So I knew by that stage, I thought I was a sort of top 50 CMO, and I just wasn't getting the jobs. And then you kind of go like, well, is it me? Have I peaked? There was a little bit of, am I too white or male or middle class or fat or whatever, or old? I don't know. Who knows? It doesn't matter. I wasn't getting the jobs that I wanted, and the jobs that I was getting calls about. You're getting a call about a fire extinguisher business in Derby to be their CMO, and you just put the phone there, sort of virtually start crying, going, This is what it's come to. And so and then the combination of my kids in South Africa, we didn't cover that. I got divorced after the cancer, which was also my kids moving to South Africa with their mum.
What happened there?
Probably a similar thing, really, which is having gone through the cancer I'd gone through. You inevitably, when you have cancer, you can't really but help be quite selfish. I mean, I think when I was in New York, I was selfish for all the wrong reasons and was self-absorbed. And I think when you go through quite nasty cancer, you do become self-absorbed and selfish, and you hear that a lot, right? And I remember writing an article for GQ, gentle plug, humble brag, about this, which was sometimes it's worse for the survivors, partner, loved ones, because they don't get all the energy and the love and it's all about the sufferer, the patient, and they have to pick up all the pieces. And in my wife's case, look after our daughter, and they don't get much support and love. And one thing we all can play when you're a victim of a life-threatening illness is the victim, right? Guess what? It's a good role to play. And I think, again, a year of me, who I'm naturally quite a selfish and self-indulgent person anyway, to then have that on you, I think for my wife was challenging. And then her dad, South African, got properly bad cancer, like lung cancer, asbestos lung cancer, terminal. And the combination of me being an arse, but with a better excuse, but me basically being a selfish arse for a year, and her dad dying in South Africa meant she was like, I'm going back with the kids. And so she took the 5-year-old Izzy and my son, who was 2 at the time, Harry, back to South Africa. When that was freaking brutal, actually.
How was that?
Yeah,
You've gone from having a family around you to...
That was really hard, actually, because I mean, that even now, I mean, it's been 10 years, 11 years, I still, that the idea that my kids are on the other side of the world, I mean, we've got an amazing relationship. We're very lucky because, we're lucky enough to be able to, frankly, pay for them to fly around, and we see them quite a bit. But that's for anyone who goes through that, that's really, really tough.
What's it like?
And it's because you sort of, I think people's natural inclination is to process, they want to kind of blame something or rationalize it. And I think in this instance, there wasn't really anyone to blame. I mean, some divorces there are, and you go, well, you had an affair or you did this. In our case, no one did any of that. If you could blame yourself or blame her, you could process it. But I didn't really blame her, and I didn't really blame myself. But it
How old were the children when they?
5 and 2.
So really young.
They're really young, and it was just it was really brutal. I mean, I take pride in being a dad. It's one of my things I'm pretty good at, actually, and I really put lots of energy into them, and I'm really, I don't think anyone's ever accused me of being a bad dad. But it was again, lessons learned, and I'm now I'm now back. I think I've drawn some curves on the piece of paper. We're now going back up, which is good.
Brilliant to hear, and lovely that you are in a position where you can fly and see your children. How old are they now?
My daughter's 16, my son's 13. They're coming over in a few weeks. We're off for Ibiza. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I'm so lucky for a few reasons. One is we managed to actually have quite a good divorce. I mean, good divorces, bad divorces. I mean, again, tip for anyone getting divorced: just be nice. Just be as nice as you can be. Forgive your partner, and just literally suck it up. I mean, I was lucky. I was so close to being getting all lawyers and barristers, and thank God the day before we due to the court, I had a little moment of we're not doing that, and ended up just having the nicest divorce you can have in those circumstances. And
does that come from just resentment? You want to sort of get back at the person and just...
I'm quite a competitive person. You kind of, I have a strong sense of right or wrong. I kind of thought I hadn't done anything wrong. And that's another lesson is it doesn't matter. Don't stop trying to be right. There's a lovely thing of just do the right thing. Don't try and be right. And I think a lot of my mistakes in life, and I've tried to be right, because I think I've got a moral high ground, and that's me at my worst when I'm like, he's clearly wrong or she's wrong. They're go figure. Whereas actually that's not helpful, and it's only my opinion. And actually just doing the right thing when you can has got to be the right way forward. So yeah, in divorce, we had a good divorce. Very lucky that I had the financial resources to mean that we could see each other a lot. I'm very lucky that my ex-wife, my kids, my new wife, my kid, everyone gets on really well. And my wife is an amazing stepmom, and my life now is amazing. Actually, I mean, it really is. And I look back on some of those awful things that happened, but I'm not glad, but I'm much better for it. And you got to take what you get dealt with and you try and learn and move on and be nice to yourself. That's another thing. It's easy, if you're quite a strong, powerful character, when that character is what turns in on you, like that can be quite bleak. But yeah, no, it's all good. I mean,
really pleased to hear that. Sounds like
exciting.
in a really good place, and the company.
I mean, I'm really, really happy now. I've got an amazing life. I'm fulfilled. Lovely wife and kids, and have some really good lessons. That's, I feel quite resilient now. I feel I've learned a lot. Much more to learn, but yeah, it's been a good run, and hopefully plenty more to come.
We'll look forward to the new one launching when it does. Sure. When will it launch?
It will launch. Gosh, this is what my investor said to me yesterday. It was literally the final question. He went, "Come on, when's it going to launch?" I don't know, but it's going to be soonish.
Exclusive.
It's slightly commercially sensitive, right? So it at some point soonish, when it's ready.
Thank you for being so specific there. Cannot wait.
When it's ready, and you will hear about it. I think it'll land quite well.
Okay. We get to the end, and we do a little summary and a little poem to close things. So I think your story is it's so inspiring because you have been through a lot, and it's painful when you have something and it's taken away. Everybody can relate to that. And you've had a great life starting off, loads of luxuries and just fantastic experiences. And then it's like, all the happiness and joy is just taken away in this moment, and then getting your career going, and then it feeling like it's fallen off, and just this like give and take is really hard. And I think you have persevered, and you have got through it, and you never gave up and just thought, well, I'm just gonna just wallow in pity now. You had maybe some moments of pity, but you fought through it. And I think for
Talk to my wife.
yeah. So I think for anybody, going through a difficult time and a tough time, you're someone who can show that, get exercising, stop sort of numbing the pain,
Yeah.
and speak
Own
to
it.
people,
Yeah.
get help, take action about it, deal with those negative thoughts, and just get out of that space, whatever you need to do it. And I think that's really inspiring, and very excited to hear of this new business venture that seems to be fueling joy and happiness. Who's clearly someone who enjoys having, a big project to get out there in the world and bring something to the world of genuine value. You've brought so much value to the world through giffgaff. Like, people have loved it. It's very affordable. It's great communities, and thanks for sharing your story.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
for sharing.
No, look, thanks. I mean, it's a funny. I've never done the whole thing, and because often you ask to talk about certain bits of it. It has been a journey. It's hard to summate. I mean, I think like I said, just be nice to yourself, own your fallibilities, talk more, and just be nice to yourself. Just sort of, but back yourself and get up and go, I'm going to have another crack at this, and own your mistakes, and surround yourself with people you love, and just realize that, we've all got flaws, and you kind of just got to manage them, and that's the journey really, is to deal with what you've been dealt with and try and make the best of it.
Yeah.
Love that.
And I've crafted another poem. Through what we want to say today.
With a frame on the wall. Go on.
So if there's anything from your story, it can be taken that being bold can get you further. Speaking up will always beat a murmur. Also, it's important to fight for things that you believe in, and life will throw obstacles at you. You just have to bob and weave them. For our man here, Gav Thompson, you can throw at him your worst. He formed his own brand of putting forward what you love and the customer first. To live life in boldness, you must always sidestep those thoughts of fear. And above all else within your life, always appreciate that it's good to be here.
Amazing.
Not bad, right?
Amazing. Got a bit of teary there. Thanks, mate.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you. Well, thanks a lot. I've really enjoyed the chat. I mean, it's funny. It's funny because lots of people just go, "You're very confident, and big ego, whatever," which underlying true. But I also bizarrely, it's a funny. My life, my whole personality is full of conflicts and contrasts, contradictions, and the big ego confident thing is also matched with a slight imposter syndrome, and kind of like, I can't believe we've spent so long talking about me, and I can't believe that couldn't be any use to anyone. But I hope it is. I think I love the format. I love you guys. I love your poetry, and yeah, it's been a real honour and privilege to talk. And I hope somewhere in there somebody will find something of interest. And I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Pleasure. They absolutely will. Thank you for coming.
Did you get the shoes? Did we train?
Oh, God, we have to do
Prep check. Yeah, no, I've got two things: watches and trainers.
Yeah.
I used to be cars, and then I got over myself. I do like Nikes. Yeah. And once you get into it, I mean, man, they're. And when you meet other people, there's a. I met a guy.
handheld shot.
Nay.
Crep check.
the watch.
The watch, and this is an Omega Snoopy, which is for watch nerds out there, quite watch nerdy. And those are some Pride Special Edition Nike 720s, which I'm proud to wear them. I believe in Pride, and I believe in Nikes.
Show the side.
These bad boys.
There we go.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
I love how we've had a podcast about how material things are not what life is about.
And we're ending on.
And now we're ending on how amazing this watch and shoe.
I'm managing them better. Okay, rum bowled, mustard,